everyone, it is Saturday, October the 5th, around 10:30 a.m., and today I am hiking in the Black Mountains of North Carolina in Pisgah National Forest, doing hike number 6 out of 7 for me of the Black Mountains Hiking Challenge by the NC High Peaks Trail Association. Hike number 5 was the Woody Ridge Trail back in August, the weekend after I defended. I figured I would knock out hikes number 6 and 7 and finish the challenge pretty quickly, but a lot of my peak bagging friends got word that I finished up with grad school, and so I was invited on a bunch of hikes the last month, and so I've been avoiding doing this hike, which I've been dreading, and doing some more fun bushwhacks to places I haven't been before. And of course, a couple weeks ago when I did Mount Gio and Mount Yonagusca in the Smokies, celebrating Tom Layton's 100th North Carolina County high point. So this hike today that I'm doing is a loop connecting the Buncombe Horse Range Trail and the Bald Knob Ridge Trail, starting at NC 128, which is the entrance to Mount Mitchell State Park off the Blue Ridge Parkway. I briefly followed the Mountains to Sea Trail and picked up the Buncombe Trail heading east, dropping from about 5,400 feet in elevation to about 3,800 to 3,600 feet in elevation along the South Toe River Road. I've been dreading this because this 4.2 mile stretch of the Buncombe Trail I think is the least used trail in all of the Black Mountains. And I've heard reports from peak bagger friends that years ago when they hiked this, in the middle of this trail when you're around 4,500 feet, in the gaps between some of the knobs, when it gets really flat and there's meadows and fields, the weeds were chest to head height and you had to just push through them and you could not see where you're going. But I'm holding out a little bit of hope because NC High Peaks has been doing a really good job the last few years in this area, blazing the trails that hadn't been blazed before or had paint blazes that were fading. They've done a lot of good clearing work and regrading trails that had really bad erosion problems. So my hope is they got to this trail in the last couple years and I don't have to encounter that. But I won't know for another hour or so because I'm still above 5,000 feet. So once I get down to South Toe River Road, I will follow that forest road about a half mile or so upriver and pick up the Bald Knob Ridge Trail, which I did 2 years ago. And that is a nice, easy trail, lots of switchbacks, changes about 1,400 feet of elevation in 2.8 miles. And that ends at the parkway near Pinnacle or Blue Ridge Pinnacle. And I have the option of hiking out to the Pinnacle and back. And it's, I think, about 1.5 miles extra, maybe 2 miles. But currently it doesn't look like I'm going to get any views up there, which is one of the reasons why I did this in reverse, because my original plan was to hike out to Pinnacle early and then come up this trail, because I wanted to see, this would be the only trail I haven't done going uphill. I want to see how this difficulty compares to the other trails in the Black Mountains. The other reason is because connecting the Bald Knob Ridge Trail and the MST is over 1 mile of road walk on the Blue Ridge Parkway and NC 128. And the clouds are really thick right now, and I would have to be walking on the shoulder for 20-25 minutes, which is not a good idea with these thick clouds. So I hope in 2 or 3 hours when I get back up to the road, it kind of thins out and it's a little bit safer to do that. But if I decide to do the Pinnacle, it's going to be about 11 miles total and 2,500 feet elevation gain. And if I skip Pinnacle, it's going to be closer to 9 miles. So after I do that, I'll only have one hike left, the Black Mountains Marathon, 26-ish miles, that I'll try to do in a couple weeks. But for now, I'm going to do this pretty boring hike that's probably going to have no views and maybe a lot of weeds that are wet to push through. Often I wait far too long to break out the map when I get close to finishing, or I just forget entirely. So while I'm still high up at 5,000 feet of elevation, let me show you the loop I'm doing. I know it's upside down, but this is the Forest Service map for the South Toe River, Mount Mitchell, Big Ivy map. That is the one I always recommend for the Black Mountains and Great Craggy Mountains. So I'm in the bottom corner of the Black Mountains, basically doing a loop around the origin of the South Toe River. So on the left here, where this dot is, that is the trail junction of the MST and the Buncombe Horse Range Trail. The parking area is where the green crosses 128. So I'm probably around this horse symbol right now. And I still got a long ways to go, descending below 5,000 feet. And this is where the kind of flat area that I'm worried about through Salt Rock Gap, around 4,500 feet. Then eventually some big switchbacks to get down to South Toe River Road, which I will follow south, going upriver, and then take the Bald Knob Ridge Trail up to the Blue Ridge Parkway. So my option here is, there's no trail on the map, but it's about 0.2 miles from this P to this little bend where there's the old Mitchell Toll Road goes around Pinnacle, and there's a blaze trail that goes straight to the top of Pinnacle. That's in total, they'll be between 1.5 miles and 2 miles out and back. And then once I get back to the trail junction, I have to follow the parkway and 128 to the crossing. So this loop by itself is just under 9 miles and shouldn't be too difficult of a hike, because I actually have a hike planned for the afternoon that's about 8 miles. So I hope it's not too difficult. I've already dropped from about 5,000 feet to around 4,500 feet on the first series of switchbacks. And that was kind of annoying. Those switchbacks mainly faced east and south, and were covered in a lot of weeds and saplings, at times a lot thicker than what I'm looking at right now. So it was pretty wet, but it wasn't that bad, honestly. And I've passed through Salt Rock Gap, and I thought maybe I was done with the worst of it. But I have arrived at that field that one of my friends told me about. On the map, this is labeled Chestnut Knob. And I guess this is what he considered awful, pushing directly through this. At the moment, I cannot find a clear path. I will search around, but it might be easiest to skirt the edge over there until I find a blaze on the other side. I hope this is the worst of it, because it's not that big of a field. It's just going to be really wet if I have to push directly through. Not as bad as it looks from a distance. Of course, my feet are completely soaked from all of this grass. But there's kind of a path coming through this, and they're just a lot shorter than what my friend described. It's probably some weed whacking done in this in the last few years. But I imagine midsummer, July, August is probably the worst time to hike this trail. Still don't know what direction I'm popping out of this field. But I'm just gonna head towards the trees and skirt the tree line. Look for some blazes. I am below 4,000 feet, still on the Buncombe Horse Range Trail, and I'm almost finished. I can hear the South Toe River below, and I have to say this trail was not nearly as bad as I anticipated. There were 2 unpleasant sections, the switchbacks from about 5,000 feet to 4,500 feet, and then the field over Chestnut Knob. But both of those were a lot worse than they could have been, because I did this still early fall and on a wet day. If I did this on a dry day, it wouldn't have been as bad. But today, everything covered in dew. My feet and legs were completely soaked. They are drying out now. But after that field, the trail began to follow a forest road track, a lot like the northern terminus of this 20+ mile trail, when it drops steeply off of Maple Camp Bald for about 2 miles along switchbacks, and then follows a forest road north for approximately 3 miles. However, that section of the trail near Middle Creek is incredibly rocky, not pleasant to walk on. This road is a lot nicer. It's been flat, hardly any rocks, and at times it's been covered in a type of lawn or golf turf grass. So I have to say I've been surprised by this, and I'm guessing that the NC High Peaks Trail Association had a lot to do with the trail condition being in really good shape, in spite of some of those tall weeds at times. It is about 12:15 p.m. Just finished the southernmost segment of the Buncombe Horse Range Trail, about 4.5 miles from Highway 128, standing on the South Toe River Bridge over the right prong of the South Toe River. It flows into the South Toe River shortly downstream, and I'm going to be following this road south, upriver. Water levels are still low. We've been in a drought basically all of September, and a lot of waterfalls and creeks look pretty pathetic recently. Road bridge over the left prong of the South Toe River. Directly under the bridge is the confluence with Hemphill Creek. That was definitely more than a mile between the two trailheads. I forgot to check the distance last night, but the Bald Knob Bridge Trail begins on the left. I've done this once back in April of 2017, starting from the bridge, going up, heading over the Pinnacle, and coming back. It's not a difficult trail at all. Pretty pleasant walk, and it's incredibly remote. Both of these trails are, because the South Toe River Road is closed for 3 to 4 months out of the year during the winter, and has actually been closed almost all of 2019 due to landslides. So the entire time I walked it, I didn't see one car, because I think the gates are still closed. So these are two very underutilized trails. I've only climbed a few hundred feet above the river on the Bald Knob Bridge Trail, and I'm already back in the clouds. This feels a lot wetter than an hour ago. I don't know if denser clouds have moved in, or because we're at the head of the South Toe River Valley, this is an area where clouds are more likely to gather. Either way, it is wet and foggy out here. I want to give a heads up about the blazing in the Black Mountains. Thanks to NC High Peaks, I think all of the trails have received these plastic diamond blazes, but sometimes they're going to conflict with the older blaze color. As you can see here, the original blaze was yellow, and I've seen this on a few of the trails in the Black Mountains, and it's not really a big deal because obviously the plastic diamonds are a lot easier to see and are not going to fade away unless they crack. But if you're looking at the National Geographic map, the US Forest Service map, and some older guidebooks, the blaze color might be different than what you find. I decided to go ahead and do the out and back to Summit Pinnacle. This is my fourth summit of Pinnacle. I haven't been up here in about 2.5 years. The high point is that rock right behind me. Highest peak in McDowell County at 5,665 feet in elevation, or 5,663 feet by ArcGIS. This is the 43rd highest ranked peak in North Carolina and is one of my favorite peaks in the state. Normally you have beautiful views, 270 degrees around the summit. The only not good views are towards the east, which has too much tree growth. But behind me, you usually have a great view of Graybeard Mountain. But the best views are to the west and to the north of the Great Craggy and Black Mountains. But today, this is my first time up here when it's completely covered in clouds. It's actually pretty pleasant up here. Cloud moisture is almost non-existent. Not much wind. It feels like it's in the mid-50s. Feels pretty good, honestly. So I thought I'd just relax here for a bit because I've decided to not do my second planned hike of the day. It was going to be a similar hike to what I did last month from Lemon Gap, where I did the easier 11-mile hike out to Max Patch and then refueled back in my car and did the harder hike up to Bluff Mountain. That was around 8 miles. And this was going to be approximately the same thing, where I started with the easier hike, doing that loop and adding this, which would be about 11 miles also, and then drive over about 10 minutes to the Walker Knob Overlook and follow the Mountains of Sea Trail south along the crest of the Great Craggy Mountains in order to bag Bullhead Mountain and Craggy Dome. I've done Craggy Dome before 3 years ago, but I haven't done Bullhead Mountain, and that's a ranked 5,000 foot peak. But I don't have that much energy, but my main thing is everything on the all trees and grasses and shrubs are just wet from moisture. And I know that Craggy Dome, I would have been surrounded by rhododendrons and shrubs up to my shoulders most of the way up, especially near the top. And I've read Bullhead was a pretty gnarly short bushwhack that required fighting through bushes. So I just could imagine that I would just be completely soaked and not having much fun on that hike. And by the time I get over to the overlook, it would have been 3 o'clock. I wouldn't have finished until about 6:37. So I figured I'd save it for another day. It's a little bit nicer outside. Maybe all the weeds have died by the time I get back here. Kind of stinks though. From here I would have had an amazing preview of the second hike. Let me show you through the clouds what you're missing. I can get this off my pole. That wasn't as seamless as I hoped. But normally you'd have amazing views west over the North Fork Swanoa River watershed and reservoir, with the Black Mountains up to the northwest, and then Walker Knob Overlook somewhere here, and I could trace the hike that I would do following the MST above the Blue Ridge Parkway. And it's usually an amazing view where you can see Bullhead Mountain, Craggy Dome, and Craggy Pinnacle directly across this valley. But you know, overall it's been a pretty dull day, and I'm sure you're irritated that I've been rambling on for 3 to 4 minutes on a peak that's completely shrouded in clouds. But at this point I feel like I'm the most interesting thing about this video and this hike. So I'm gonna chill up here for a little bit longer and road walk back to my car, about 1.5 miles. Well, that's it for hike number 6 for the Black Mountains Hiking Challenge. Back at the MST NC 128 crossing. My car is just above me. You're definitely going to hear some cars passing by. It was a dull hike, but you know, not all of them can be winners. If you just set your mind to only hiking when the weather's nice, you're never going to be able to finish any of these trail, waterfall, or peak bagging challenges. Sometimes when you have free time, you need to knock out something, you just need to go for it no matter what the weather's like. And fortunately, it's just cloudy all day. It misted somewhat, but it never rained. So all of the moisture I got was just rubbing against trees and saplings and bushes, which is annoying. You know, I'm glad that I'm ending the hike now. It's 3:40 p.m. Been hiking about 5.5 hours. Track says 11.5 miles. After cleanup, it'll probably be 11.2, 11.3. And maybe 2,400 feet of elevation gain. I don't really know. It wasn't that hard. The steepest part of the entire hike is the short out and back up to Pinnacle. Otherwise, both the Buncombe Horse Range and Bald Knob Ridge trails are moderate with a lot of switchbacks. So, you know, next time I'm gonna probably hopefully finish this challenge in a couple weeks. Next weekend I got some birthday parties to go to, so hopefully I'm ready, because the light is quickly fading towards the end of October. And yeah, I'm just glad that I didn't do another hike today. Sometimes I get summit fever. It's more like maximum daylight fever, and you don't really have to worry about getting stuck on summits in North Carolina in terrible weather for the most part. But I like to maximize all of my time when I drive 3 to 4 hours to hike. But my feet have been soaking all day, so it's a good thing I stopped, because my feet would be ruined for an entire week if I'd added another 8 miles. So I'll get back to that in a month or two. See you guys next time.